when the recording has started. It says starting recording. There we go. I've got a little timer now. So, hello, everybody. I am your host, Eric Smith, and today we are talking with the author of some classic cozy horror novels like Chainsaw Horror, Gobbler, Fuck Your Thanksgiving, and They Want Us Gone. This is my favorite horror with Judith Sonnet. Welcome, Judith.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
Uh, have you ever been called a cozy horror author before?
I have not. That's a new one.
Well, hopefully
I
people.
think I think
Yes.
that counts as false advertising.
Well, I'm hoping from the titles that I mentioned that people understand that
Yeah.
was a joke. I did it mainly to amuse myself. Um, by way of sort of introducing yourself to people and maybe put you on the spot a little bit, I do always ask if you had to write your author bio right now, what would it say?
It would say I'm a prolific author of splatterpunk and extreme horror. I'm known for creating the 10-day challenge, which is where I and other independent authors will set to start, finish, edit, and then publish a short novel in a 10-day time frame. And it's like author boot camp. um, I would also say I'm a trans woman who comes from Missouri and currently lives in Utah. And I'm a huge fan of Nicolas Cage.
All right, great. Love to hear another Nicolas Cage fan.
Oh, he's great.
Well, there you go. What's your favorite Nick Cage movie?
My absolute favorite, it's more recent, but Pig was beyond good and beyond what I expected of it when I went to see it. I just think it's one of his most powerful performances. But like the story and the movie is good enough that it didn't need to be a Nicolas Cage movie to be good.
I have not seen that one. I've heard that he dials down the Nick Cage in
Yeah,
the.
there's hardly any of that type of stuff in it. When I went to see that in theaters, half the audience kind of knew it was going to be a real dramatic movie, and the other half expected memes. And that half was very disappointed.
I mean I've seen him do both. The straight, acting drama or
Yeah.
comedy. My first exposure to him was Valley Girl.
Oh, yeah. That's a fantastic movie.
And I feel like he's leaned into the Nick Cage of it all
Yeah.
in the past
And
few
it's
years.
great when he gets like projects that really need that sort of amplification he can bring to it. But it's also great when he takes a step back and he genuinely acts.
Yes, absolutely. I do have a few more sort of like very interviewee kinds of questions before we start digging into things. Um, and I just thought of this one maybe half an hour ago because I was finishing my laundry, which I absolutely hate to do. So, what is your least favorite chore?
Oh my gosh. I kind of don't pay much attention when I do chores. That's usually when I'm listening to audiobooks or trying to come up with stuff. Um, I don't like things that require a lot of scrubbing.
Okay. I don't
Yet
know
I
why.
enjoy doing the dishes. I don't know. It's kind of a weird one. I don't really think of things like that and go like, oh, this is like a horrible thing to do. Like, chores are chores, whatever. Do them and get them done and move on. Like,
Yeah, I don't know why I dislike laundry. It's not
yeah.
like it's not like it takes up a lot of time. You put it in the washer, and then
I
you get
think
to walk
laundry's
away.
cozy for me because I have to use a nearby laundromat, and so I'll always bring a book and get a lot of reading done while the laundry goes.
See, and that's the thing. I could just put it in the washer and then come back up here and read, and then throw it in the dryer and come back up here and read. And but I don't know. It just bugs me.
Yeah.
Um. All right. What let's see. Okay, I think this might be the last-ish of the weird interview questions, but what are your favorite books and or movies that would be surprising to people who only know you through your work?
Well, I write extreme horror and splatterpunk, and I promote a lot of that type of stuff. So I think some people would be surprised if they didn't know me and just knew me from my books that I am a huge fan of classical fiction. I'm very into Mark Twain and William Faulkner and a lot of the Bohemians and authors and artists like that. But I also love really trashy paranormal romances. um, so like Twilight was huge for me when I was younger, and I fairly recently discovered Crave, and I'm looking forward to reading more from that.
Okay. Did you ever read, there's an infamous, oh, I guess it's not Twilight, it's an infamous Harry Potter fanfic.
Is it My Immortal?
I think so, yes.
So I actually have a print copy of that. It's
I've
it's in storage right now, but I have a print edition of My Immortal, and it's so bad.
I've considered buying a print copy of it
Oh,
because
it's worth it.
I barely do digital. I always forget that I have digital stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I heard about it on a podcast, and it just sounds like the Troll 2 of books.
It's one of those, I think it is satire. I don't know if that's how it began, but that's definitely how it ended up. But it's a great party trick. When I have people over and we're all talking and we need something to laugh at, I can take out my copy of My Immortal and read it to people, and we'll pass it around and let everybody get a chance to read it out loud, and it's really fun.
Yeah, I have read the bit of the sample on Amazon, the first couple of pages, and it's amazing. Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into Judith Sonnet. Um, what was your first exposure to splatterpunk or extreme horror?
I read mostly adventure and science fiction books growing up. And then I discovered horror through Ray Bradbury and then Stephen King when I was around middle school, early middle school. And I had a teacher who handed me a Richard Laymon book.
Wow.
I think Endless Night was the very first like extreme hardcore horror book I read, and it changed my life.
So that was the book that sort of started you on the path?
Yeah, that got me into it. I started reading Jack Ketchum and Brian Keene immediately after that, and then I found out about Joe R. Lansdale, John Skip, and Craig Spector, and I collected old vintage '80s paperbacks when I was younger.
Nice.
Ended up selling a lot of them after college, and now I'm reclaiming that collection and getting all those old books back.
I've been there. There are quite a few books around me at this moment that are like the second time I've purchased them. I've gone
Yeah.
through some tight financial times and had to sell off bits of the collection, and you slowly get them back.
Yeah, and I'm all for rereading books. So there's a ton of them that I really want to go back through.
Oh, absolutely. I've read for a while Skip Inspector's The Light at the End was my favorite horror novel,
It's a
and I've
great
read it
book. Yeah,
many times.
I think I want to say The Bridge is my favorite of theirs right now. But I just got a copy of The Scream, so I'm hoping to read that soon.
Nice. I think I might have asked you this on Facebook. Does it have the little fold out poster in it?
I wish it did. It did not. I
I
love
could
that.
see.
I've seen pictures of that poster. I was really hoping when I ordered it that it would have that, but nope.
I don't know, 2 yards away from my Skip Inspector books. I can see them from here. I do need to reread The Bridge. That's probably the one I've read the least.
I'm bringing that one to KillerCon this year so that John Skip can sign it for me.
Nice. Skip Inspector and Joe Lansdale both were authors I was reading before I knew I was reading them, because I had a subscription to Twilight Zone magazine, and they had short stories in there, and I didn't pay that much attention to the authors' names when I was
Yeah,
reading that. And then with Skip Inspector, when I read Deadlines, and with Joe Lansdale, when I think it was By Bizarre Hands, their short story collections. It was one of Lansdale's short story collections, and I recognized those stories and looked in the copyright and said, "Oh, these were published in Twilight Zone. I've read these before. I didn't realize." But yeah, love Lansdale, love Skip Inspector, um, love Ketchum. Got to meet him, which was very nice. Got him to autograph my cheerleader skeleton copy of The Girl Next Door, which he
how
was
did
not.
you react seeing that cover again?
He was not happy about it, and the signature actually says something like, "Oh, this cover again." And I told him, I said, I have another copy. I've actually read the leisure copy. I said, but I couldn't pass up this cover.
Right. It's such a holy grail for collectors.
It's a classic. Those, again, the whole sort of paperbacks from hell thing. Those
Yeah.
covers were just amazing. And I like to see that some of that style has made a comeback.
Yeah. I'm thankful the artists I work with really understand what I'm going for, trying to like go over the top with our covers, and get eyes on them. Like I have a book cover that's a decapitated head in a toilet.
Nice.
I'm like, that won't sell at Books a Million, but I'm happy to have it on the cover.
You do have some fantastic covers, and I have a little stack of books here I'm going to show off. But the first book of yours that I purchased and read was Chainsaw Hooker. And I thought that had a great cover. That's a Chad Lutzke cover, correct?
Yeah, he that was a pre-made cover that inspired me to write that book.
And unfortunately, I don't have that one with me because it's buried in a stack of books
Yeah.
somewhere.
Well,
But
that book is currently out of print, but I'm hoping to bring it back next year. There's a few of my earlier books I'm wanting to do re-releases on.
but what I do have here is actually a lot of the ones that I've already read are. I have to sort of circulate. I have so many books I have to sort of circulate and put the things I've already read sort of out of reach, and the things I haven't read yet more accessible. But one that I have read already with a great cover is Hell.
Hey, I like that book.
I loved this book. I love that cover.
You.
This guy, he reminds me of the priest from the beginning of City of the Living Dead.
Yeah, there's all of the poster art for City of the Living Dead very much inspired the book. I think even more than the actual movie did. Oh, that's a lie. There's a ton of that movie in that book. um, but no,
There is.
Ruth Anna Evans did that cover, and she did such a fantastic job. It was like exactly what I pictured when I described what I wanted the cover to look like.
It's a fantastic cover. I thought it was a fantastic book.
Thank
Um,
you.
I, I could hear the score from City of the Living Dead in my head as I was reading it. And you say, I think, a couple of times in the introduction and the afterword that there's not much of a narrative, but I disagree. I think it has as much narrative as the Fulci films do.
Yeah. I'll be honest, there were chapters and paragraphs in that book that I wrote to kind of like explain things and tie loose ends together. And I deleted all of those before publishing it because I felt like it would have just been a betrayal to Italian horror and how bonkers that was. And how even if there is a story, you kind of always have to pick through all the dreamlike visuals and weird stuff to find it.
Yes, absolutely. And I keep citing City of the Living Dead because that's the one that I've seen the most. Um, but it does have just weird, almost arbitrary scenes, and you captured that feeling, I feel.
Thank you.
Was it difficult to get that style in your writing?
I'll be honest, hell is like the easiest time I've ever had writing a book. It was just relaxing and barely any challenge for me because like I have ingrained myself in Italian movies um, for so long, and writing something that like didn't require outlining, didn't require a plot, was just like, okay, what can I think of today and how can I make that fit the story? Like it was just so much fun. I had a blast. I shot through that in a few weeks just writing that. And I sincerely miss writing that book. I don't know if I can replicate it in another one. I don't know if I can do another Italian book without it feeling kind of like I'm chasing what I did with Hell. But I'm so happy with how that book turned out.
Well, see, now you that was going to be my next question, so I'll sort of put a little spin on it. How about more of a straight giallo? Have you considered that?
Yeah, I think with Giallo, like there's a lot of people who will just call any Italian movie a Giallo,
Hmm.
and I fundamentally disagree with that. Um, because it's got to be a tight murder mystery with a satisfying conclusion.
Hmm.
And I want to make sure that if I do a giallo, I do it right and I do it the proper way. So I want to do it. I just don't have the right story for it yet.
Okay. All right. I just lost my train of thought. Um,
I will say there is going to be a sequel to Hell,
okay.
but I am not writing it.
Oh, can you tell us who is?
Not yet.
Okay. I do remember the next question I had, which was, since you talked about um, how easy this one was to write and everything, are you generally a planner or a pantser?
It really depends on the book. Something like Summer Never Ends. I did a lot of initial planning on that, but then the book kind of went its own way. That book was actually, when I sat down to write it, I had a full outline and it would have had supernatural elements and like church rituals and all this weird stuff. And then halfway through, it became a psychological thriller with human horror, and I had to scrap all those plans and just follow it down that trail that went. So I tend to pants even when I try and plan.
Okay. And do you find that frustrating that you have these plans and then it just sort of takes off on its own?
Not really. If you find something that's more exciting than what you had planned, then there's a certain joy to it of like, oh, this is going to be even better. And it doesn't like nullify how hard you worked on what you did before. It just feels like what you did before is now a launch pad to get to a better book.
Okay. I want to show off this book. It's not technically one of yours, but your name is on the cover. I
Ooh.
just got it.
Oh, hell yeah. I
That
love
is
that book.
Ooze, and featuring Judith Sonnet. How do you
Yeah,
like being
and
featured?
Roland Bursey Jr.
Hmm. Little bursts of body horror. Very fun
Yeah.
cover. Keep trying to keep.
There's a ton of really great writers in that book. I was very honored to be invited into it, and a lot of new authors. I think there's a few authors that is their first publication.
Oh, very nice. I
Yeah.
like I like anthologies, and I tend to, um, as I'm reading, just hitting the computer and looking up. Oh, this story was great. I'm not really familiar with this author. I'm going to jump online, find out what they've done, throw them on my wish list. And it happens with pretty much any anthology I read.
Good.
And I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to digging into this one.
And Ruth Anna Evans, who did the cover for Hell, edited that anthology and did all the artwork for it. And she's a fantastic artist.
Yeah, from what I've seen so far. And then before I have a little stack here, but we'll show off this one that I got recently. I have not read it yet, and that is They Want Us Gone.
Oh.
And I do like the back cover. Now, you've had some problems with this one with Amazon?
Yeah, thankfully it looks like everything is in order. So Amazon, from how I understand it, is cracking down on adult content in books. So if you mark your book as being for adults, they'll put it in a dungeon, um, which is bizarre to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I released the book. Nobody could find it through the search tab. They had to either follow a link I'd posted or go to my Amazon bio and just scroll through all my books. And I have a lot of books to scroll through. So
Yeah.
I was surprised to see people were jumping through those hoops to get to that book, because I feel like it's one of the more important books I've written. And I was really nervous about releasing it and then really frustrated when it was hidden after it came out. But thankfully, it looks like Amazon fixed it so that it can pull up. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Godless. The digital version is over there. And Ruth Anna Evans did the interior artwork for it. Christy Aldridge did the cover, but there's interior pictures that Ruth made.
Well, you said this is an important work. Do you want to tell people what it is?
Yeah, so They Want Us Gone it's both a collection and a connected novella. It's short stories about queer characters and the bigotry that queer people like me face, in online spaces and in public spaces. So it begins with separate stories that are all just about queer characters. And as the book goes, something ties them together.
Okay.
I won't spoil what it is. It's a very personal book. You are going to feel like I just took you to therapy with me. um, but it's the most I've ever cried while writing a book, and I'm very happy with it. And I'm happy that it's more accessible for people to find now.
Does it fall under the extreme category?
I'd say it's more emotionally extreme than it is like over the top gory. There is a lot of gore and violence, and there's one story in particular that is incredibly gross. If you do not like shit, you will not like that story. but mostly by the time you get to the ending, it's mostly just about how frustrated and rage filled, a lot of queer people, including myself, have been with the trajectory of American politics right now.
Well, one of the things I've found in the works that I've read of yours is, yeah, you have all this extreme, over the top violence and gore, but and the stories are relatively short, novella length and such. But I find that you're developing the characters very well in this short amount of time.
Thank you.
Um, in with Chainsaw Hooker, I thought, I mean, you gave time to the bad guys and gave us their backstories as well as our good guys, for lack of better ways to put it. And in Gobbler, I don't know the page counts off the top of my head, but maybe the first quarter after that introduction, the first quarter is us getting to know the characters. And I really enjoy that. As much as I like just some mindless violence on occasion, when you
Yeah.
mix that with character development, because to me, character, well, maybe it's a 50-50 split. When I'm reading fiction, my main goal is to be entertained, but the most important element of the story to me is character.
Yeah, I've said before, I care more about characters and vibes more than I do plot, and I've embraced that. I love a good plot, but if you don't have a feeling about the character, whether that feeling is positive or negative,
Hmm.
then that plot just won't affect you.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let's move on to the 10-day challenge. And before I start showing off some books, how did this whole thing come about?
Um, so the very first book I ever did my personal 10-day challenge with was No One Rides for Free. And I that story, it was one of the hardest things that I knew I'd have to write when I sit down and write it. And so I gave myself a short time frame to do it. And I was like, if I can't do it in this amount of time, then maybe I can't do this story. And I posted on Twitter and was like, oh, like, yeah, I might try and write the book in 10 days. And I had someone say, you shouldn't do that. And that immediately made me go, well, fine, I'll do it. So yeah, it was mostly just to challenge myself. And then down the road, I invited Candace Nola and Lucas Mangum to join me, and we did the three Earth Versus books. Yeah, there they are. And yeah, that was just for fun because Lucas and Candace are friends, and we wanted to challenge each other and read each other's work and come up with something new. And I kind of thought that would be it, but later on down the road, Brian Barry and Otis Bateman and I decided to do the Splatter Crimes books, which we did in 10 days, and those made me very happy. And I said, well, let's bring all of them together and do Splatter at Sea. And the only one who wasn't available for it was Lucas Mangum. So Chisto Healy came in. I hope I pronounced his name right. But yeah, we got 5 people to do 5 novellas in 10 days for the Splatter at Sea.
Very nice. Well, I'm going to show off. I just showed them off as sort of groups, as you
Yeah.
mentioned. I'm going to show off all of these fantastic covers one at a time. The only set that I have read so far is the Earth Versus, and we have Earth, a stupid ring light. Uh, Earth Versus, the Star Mummy, Lucas Mangum, very fun, and Earth Versus the Lava Spiders by
Oh, I
Candace
love it.
Nola. And I'm a fan of both Lucas and Candace, wonderful authors, seem to be wonderful people.
Oh, they're great. Yeah. Did you see that in Candace's, all the chapter titles are like 50s song track lists?
I think I did notice that. Let me take a quick look at a. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I thought that was just so clever of her.
And then we have yours, Earth versus
Versus
the
the
Nudist Camp
nudist camp
Freaks.
freaks.
And I'm hopefully I don't want to make you blush, but just like hell, I thought this was a pitch perfect 50s science fiction story.
Thank you.
Movie, old movie story. The characters, the set pieces, everything. As a fan, as someone who grew up watching these types of movies, it felt like this was a novelization of a movie that already existed.
I appreciate hearing that because, yeah, I love my Italian movies. I love my gory books, but like, I also love B movies from the 1950s. And I watched a lot of them. So getting to write one, I had to really think like, don't go the splatterpunk route with this. You have to be authentic to like what these types of movies felt like. So it's my most restrained book, I think, and I think it's better for doing that.
Yeah, I don't think it would have worked for what it is supposed to be. I mean, of course, you get to say what it's supposed to be. It's your book,
Yeah.
but I don't think it would have worked with excessive violence or anything else.
No, and even the nudity, I never like described the naked bodies in it.
Right.
The way I wrote it, I pictured like censorship bars over all the bodies. I was like, do I sit down and describe that, or would that be too kind of weird to put in the book?
I would have thought tree branches in front of the naughty bits or
Yeah.
things, Excuse me. Yeah, 'cause I grew up with this sort of thing. We had, when I was a kid, we had on Friday nights, Big Chuck and Houlihan, which then became Big Chuck and Little John. It was Friday nights. They showed these old movies, and they had the goofy comedy skits at the commercial breaks and stuff. And then on Saturdays, we had a thing called Superhost, and he showed like the Blob and Earth versus the Spider and tons of Godzilla movies. That's where I saw my Godzilla movies. But or Invasion of the Saucer People, is that the name of it? There's one that I absolutely love
That's what it's called. Yeah.
where the needles come out of their fingers with the alcohol.
Yeah.
Uh, love that movie. Invasion of the Saucer People. Yeah.
I know I put like a list of 50s and 60s movies that really inspired me in the back of that one. And
Yeah.
I want to say one of them was like Night of the Blood Beast or something.
Right.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Let's see. Where is that list? Attack of the Giant. Yeah, there's Night of the Blood Beast, Attack of the Giant Leeches, Creature with the Atomic Brain, The Beast of Yucca Flats, Beast from Haunted Cave. Yeah, just fantastic stuff. So entertaining. So the second round was the Splatter Crimes. I have not read these yet.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the Splatter Crimes books. I love crime and action writing as much as horror. I felt like I haven't really had a chance to explore that side for a while. So getting to do Splatter Crimes was a dream come true because none of us really wanted to do horror books with them, but we wanted them to be horrifying and violent and over the top. But yeah,
I
Brian Barry's, it's kind of like a detective noir book, but with cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers in the sewers. Otis's is just pure revenge and hatred, double crossing and torture. And then mine was kind of like Tenement, but with drug lords instead of street punks.
Well, these of the three sets, these do have my favorite covers. And there's Otis's.
Hell yeah.
And then we have Brian's.
Oh, look at that.
And then yours, just fantastic.
Which, yeah, Christy Aldridge, Grim Poppy design made all those covers. And yeah, she killed it. She did such a fantastic job.
I love the little price tags in the corner.
Yeah.
And although the yellow spines make me again think Giallo.
Yeah, those old school paperbacks, man. I
And
love
then,
them.
what's that?
I said I love them.
Oh, absolutely. Then the most recent set, which again, fantastic covers, and I love the spines.
Yeah, ain't that pretty?
The very pretty spines.
And
But
that's Christy Aldridge again who did these covers.
there's that one. Brian's Curse of the Samurai. And Otis, Evil Rose Up. What do we have? Candace Nolas, Sirens and Seaweed. And then I did not realize that these two went together, the covers. But we have The World Beneath. And of course yours with the exclamation point, Eels!
Eels! So maybe I'm going to blow your mind here. All the covers actually go together. It's the
Does it go as it shows it on the back?
Yeah, as it goes on the back, with mine and Gisto's being on the bottom.
Yes. Well, they're again absolutely beautiful covers. I can't wait to dig in, but I do. I try to like spread out what I'm reading from an author because essentially I don't want to run out.
Yeah.
And I don't want to burn out. Although you have so much out there that I don't know that I'm going to run out.
Thank you. I'm
And you're
almost done with a new one too.
now, is this the door stopper, as you call it?
No, yeah, the door stopper. I've kind of posted about it. I haven't really talked about the plot or given the title away. It's going to take a while.
Okay.
I'm still introducing the main characters. There are three main characters, and I am almost 200 pages into the book.
Wow.
Um, this book I didn't really want to like just fill it with words just to fill it with words. It's not that type of book, but it's just such a big story. I feel like I would be sacrificing a lot of important stuff if I churned it out. So I'm hoping to have it ready next year, but it's a big post-apocalyptic dark fantasy horror.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's been fun.
So can you tell us what you're currently working on?
So I'm currently working on a short novella inspired by H.P. Lovecraft.
Okay.
Um, the title is Ichthus, and it is about people who are being corrupted by fish gods with very deviant sexual desires. So
Those
I'm
fish
trying
gods
to,
get you every
this
time.
one, I'm trying to really mix like monster smut with over the top gore.
So would this be in the vein of the Lovecraft things that Edward Lee did?
Yeah, that type of stuff, and Stuart Gordon's adaptation of Lovecraft's work, like Dagon and Castle Freak, more like those than like Reanimator.
Okay. Excuse me. What would you say, or do you know off the top of your head, what is your longest work that you've released so far?
Oh, I think Deep Dark is the longest one, and that one, D&T put that out. Don Shea. It's a creature feature. It's a disaster story about people getting trapped in a cave underneath a resort and finding out that there is a murderer among them. And not only is there a murderer among them, but there's also killer snails coming up from the bottom of the cave.
Oh,
And
eating
that one,
animals.
it's a ton of fun. I loved writing that one. I wrote that one a little bit tamer than most because I wanted it to be something that my mother could read since she was a cave guide, and she really loves caves. So yeah, she just finished it and she liked it. So that made me happy.
Nice. Well, I love a good killer animal story,
Oh, me too.
which is why one of the reasons I'm so looking forward to Eels.
Yes.
I just recently read Suckerville by Chris Sorensen, which
I
is
need to read
great.
that one. I love that cover. I've seen it floating around.
And I guess his next one, it's sort of a companion piece, is Bee Tornado.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, the cover looks great. Looks like it goes with the Suckerville cover, but yeah, I don't know. Again, I think it's just because of the stuff I grew up watching. I just love killer animals, whether they're normal animals that have started killing people or mutated versions of animals that are killing people. Just love it. Plus, people suck. Let's let
Yeah.
the animals have the world.
I always feel bad at the end of killer animal movies when the animal gets defeated.
Well, that's why the best ones are where the animals don't get defeated.
Yeah. I'm like, he's just following nature. Let him go.
Exactly. Um, Moving on to something else. And before we started recording, you said you can't talk too much about certain aspects of this, but I'd like to talk about Sleepaway Camp.
Yes.
So you have written, finished
Still
writing,
writing it. Still in the
still
process
writing.
of writing it. Yeah.
Okay, so you're writing the novelization for Sleepaway Camp.
Yes.
Going to
Um,
be yes.
yeah, Encyclopocalypse is behind this. They Sean DeRager reached out to me and said, "Hey, if we got the rights to Sleepaway Camp, we want an author who can like tackle it with a lot of love, but also awareness of like how trans people feel about that shocking twist at the end of it. And they were wondering if I would want to do it or if I knew somebody who'd do it. And I gladly said yes. um, so when they got the rights, we announced it, and I have begun work on it. And it's a lot of work, but it's been very rewarding so far.
Okay. So I believe, and please correct me if I'm ever wrong about anything. I believe you said on Facebook that you do not think it's an anti-trans movie. Is that correct?
I think it exists in this weird space where like maybe it was made with homophobic intentions, but it's been so reclaimed by the queer community that like those intentions are almost nil when talking about Sleepaway Camp. Because every time I watch that movie with trans people, we love it. We're just like, yay, go Angela. She's just trying to have a good time at camp, and she has to kill all these annoying people who get in her way.
All right. I don't know if this is going to cause problems. My theory. Of course, I'm an old white man. Um, and as I said earlier, I'm going into things to be entertained. I typically don't analyze my entertainment. But
Yeah.
because I've heard so many people saying that it's an anti-trans movie, I looked a little deeper, and to me, it actually, for lack of a better way to put it, actually has a pro-trans message. Because this is the way I see it. Angela is not actually a trans character because she hasn't made because she's forced into the Angela gender.
Yeah. Which it's almost like for cis people to watch that and see, oh, like this is what it feels like to be trapped in a gender that you don't feel related to. Yeah.
Exactly. That's how I see it. She's what we're seeing, and again, I don't necessarily have the best way to put this, but we're seeing the damage that's being done to someone who's being forced to live as a gender with which they do not identify,
Yeah.
which to me is again pro-trans because it's saying, look, this person is not what you are saying they are, and you're causing this damage to them.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing to analyze because like, it's such a simple movie.
Yes.
Really it is. It's very straightforward and in your face until the very end when all of a sudden we get this twist and the audience is immediately left to sort of handle it however they choose to handle it. And so that's why I get it when a lot of people watch Sleepaway Camp and feel like it is transphobic, and why a lot of people connect with it as Angela being a trans character, and a lot of people connect with it the way you do and see it as like almost symbolism of what it feels like to be trapped in the quote unquote wrong gender, or
Right.
whatever gender your parents assigned you rather than the gender that you are. And yeah, no, it's weird because like it's genuinely one of those things where you can read it however you want to read it. The way the movie leaves it, it's right at that point where like they're not going to hold your hand and tell you what it's about.
See, I tend to think if a year ago someone had just asked me, I would have said, no, he just did that ending for the shock value.
Yeah.
Didn't put any thought into it, just
And
thought,
maybe
hey,
that's
wouldn't this
entirely
be a
what it
crazy
is. It
ending?
could easily just be shock value.
Um, so what how do you look at the movie personally?
So, and you'll see it in my novelization. I kind of enjoy the idea of Angela being a trans hero who,
Okay.
even though she's a killer and she's very violent, I kind of feel on her side. And you'll see that in the book. Um, especially during the ending.
Well, I mean, I'm on her side when I watch the
Yeah.
movie. Everyone else are jerks.
She just wants to have a good time at camp. Leave her alone.
Yeah, people just keep messing with her. But it's an issue, and again, because I'm, a cis white man, older gentleman, it's not an issue that I in the past gave a lot of thought to. Things like Dress to Kill.
Yeah.
I've heard negative things about that. And to me, I'm watching an entertaining movie. It's either I've either enjoyed the movie, I thought it was good, I didn't like the movie, but I hadn't, let's say before maybe 10 years ago, before maybe it became a bigger subject, hadn't considered how some people, and again, this is because I just don't like people in general. People look at something and just go, see what that movie's just reinforcing that, trans people are crazy and they're going to kill us all. Whether or not that's the intention of the movie,
Yeah.
there are just
And it's
people
weird
that
because, like,
see it that
especially
way.
in the 70s and 80s, that was kind of the only representation that trans people had. And I feel like there's less genuine representation now than there was then. So a lot of trans people like me are watching these older, quote unquote, problematic films just because it's like, hey, at least we have a little representation in it, even though we're going around killing people. Like, Disney will put like a gay character in the background and you have to squint to see them
Right.
so they can easily cut that character out when they're redistributing the film. Like, and then they praise themselves for being so progressive. And it's like, I'd rather have, problematic media from the past that we can have fun analyzing than absolutely nothing. Table scraps. I'd rather have that than table scraps. And I feel like modern movies a lot of times are just giving me nothing to work with.
Are there any modern movies that you would, I don't know if praise is the right word, but see as a positive in this? Are there any modern trans movies?
I haven't seen much, and that really disappoints me and makes me sad. There are movies that I think symbolically can be read very trans, like David Cronenberg's Crimes of the Future. I think that is a incredibly beautiful movie about people owning their bodies and allowing their bodies to change, and that to keep people from changing their bodies is destroying them. And I cried and wept watching that movie, and I thought it was beautiful. But like, really, there's no trans people in that movie. It's just symbols that feel like a secret handshake to trans people.
Well, it seems like body horror would fit in very well with trans fiction, trans
Yeah.
horror. I don't know, simply because it all comes down to the body and whether or not the body is correct. Is that
My life was a body horror story until I figured out for myself that I needed to transition. Like, being trapped in a body that I didn't feel comfortable with and happy with. Like, yeah, it's terrifying.
and what I would guess that it's they want us gone. Is there a work? Is that the work that's most personal as far as that sort of thing goes?
It is, yeah. And you'll be surprised by just how personal that book gets. To the people at home, if you've read it, you already know. If you haven't, get fucking ready. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of myself and my journey and my thoughts and feelings in that book.
Well, I definitely look forward to reading it. It's on that stack
Thank you.
there.
Yeah.
Um, all right, before we get into the main features, I like to call it, any other thoughts on Sleepaway Camp?
It's a fantastic movie, and it's got some of the best lines in slasher history.
Eat shit,
Eat shit,
Ricky.
live
Eat
is
shit,
something
die.
I say on an almost daily basis now.
I'm very much looking forward to the book.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah, I can't give you an exact deadline on when it'll be out. I think maybe next year, even by next summer. But yeah, it's complicated and difficult, but I hope it's a rewarding experience.
well, having read Hell and Earth versus the Nudist Freaks, I have great confidence in your ability to do this novelization.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I will say I am a fan of Encyclopocalypse. Um, I think the first thing I ever got from them was The Final Gate.
Yes. Oh, I love that one. And that's another Italian type story.
It's if that's not the first one, it's the first one where I was aware of their name, Encyclopocalypse. I have a bunch of their novelizations, which includes reprints of old stuff, John Skip and Craig Spector, of course, with Fright Night. And they are, to me, they're hit and miss. But I think yours is going to be a hit.
Thank you. I hope so.
I do have to. The last one I read was Jeff Strand's Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Oh, I still need to read that one.
That absolutely went straight up into my top 5 funniest books I've ever read. It
That's so good to hear.
was
I love
fantastic.
Jeff. Jeff's an awesome guy.
Okay, so anything else before we get to the main feature?
No, I'm excited.
Okay.
I got my copy.
All right. So before we get into this, folks, we're going to be spoiling this. So if you haven't read it or don't want the spoilers, pause this, go read the book, and then come back and watch the rest of this. But we are going to talk about Judith's choice for my favorite horror, which was Come Out Tonight by Richard Laymon. Pretty good sized novel.
Oh my God. Before we start, I've got a little advertising to do.
Sure.
Dirty car? You want a clean car? We want a new computer for the school newspaper. Come to us. It's a win-win situation. Win Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Where? Parking lot, Fairview High School, 8321 Fairview Boulevard, Los Angeles. How much? A $5 donation. If not completely satisfied, we'll refund your dirt.
Yes. Refund your dirt. That's great. So when did you first read this?
So this one I actually read pretty late in my layman journey. I used to work at a hospital post 2020 COVID, and I was in the dish room taking care of kitchen supplies, and I'd listen to audiobooks. So the first time I heard Come Out Tonight was through an audiobook, and I was already a huge Layman fan, but I was surprised that this wasn't just one that I read and went, oh yeah, it's pretty good. Because like there were so many Layman books before that had such high impact on me that a few of them were just more entertaining and couldn't reach those highs. And this superseded everything I'd read by him before.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Can you give us a quick synopsis of what this book is?
Yeah, so Sherry and her boyfriend are about to get busy. It's a real late and hot night, and her boyfriend realizes that he forgot to grab condoms. So he runs out to the 24/7 gas station and does not come back. And eventually, Sherry decides to go out and see what happened to him. And when she can't find him, she's wandering around town looking for him. She falls into line with Toby Bones, who is an ex-student that has been obsessed with her. And Toby is not a nice guy.
Oh.
He might seem like a nice guy at first, but he is not a nice guy.
All right. I'll tell you. So this copy that I have is from 47 North, which is, I found out, an Amazon imprint.
Yeah.
It's their science fiction fantasy horror imprint. I thought when I received it that it was a bootleg copy. And the entire back cover copy is that.
Oh,
It
yeah,
just
that's
says,
super descriptive.
when a young woman's boyfriend disappears, she heads out to search for him, straight into the path of a psychotic killer. And then there's a note that it's just straight up copied from the Leisure.
Yeah, and I've got the Leisure edition.
There's
Oh,
some
look at that.
white space. It's literally the inside of it is the size of a mass market paperback that they just put in a trade paperback size.
Yeah, that's how I've got the Cellar and Blood Games are both like that on my shelf.
I'm very disappointed. I wish I'd had the time to go out and search for like a Leisure copy of it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no, I heard it on Audible first, and then I think I ordered my copy from eBay. I got a Leisure copy from it, and then I reread it, and I've read it again, and I've read it again.
Before we get into really dig into this book, first of all, I mentioned that this was going to be part of this interview and part of my YouTube series, and a friend of mine on Twitter said that this is his favorite Laymon book as well. And for me, Laymon has been kind of hit and miss. Do you find that, or have you really just loved everything that you've read from him?
I'm a diehard Laymon fan. I've argued that even the worst Laymon books are still really entertaining. So, like, my least favorite Laymon book is To Wake the Dead, which is about a mummy, and it's okay, but it makes up for its lacking parts by just being absolutely bonkers. There's like people trapped in a cage who are trying to figure out how they can like fuck their captor to death. There's like all sorts of there's like a weird mummy just wandering around Los Angeles killing people and leaving them dehydrated, all sorts of just wild shit.
Like
So
a good
even
mummy
though it's
story.
like I read the book and I'm like, it's not great, it's not even really good, it was still fun. But like the the high points on Laymon's career are just so incredibly high that like, the low points don't really have to fall that low. Like,
Well, the first one I read, let me see if I don't remember the first Layman that I read was the one about the librarian
In the Dark.
in the dark. Yeah, the one she starts going on the basically scavenger hunt kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that book.
See, I did not like it.
Oh no. Yeah,
I
that's one
was
of my favorites.
I was not a fan. I knew this was going to be a problem. I wasn't a fan, but that's not to say I won't reread it and enjoy it
Yeah.
someday.
Have
Because
you read Island?
no,
Oh, get on that.
I will say this is a little tangent. I always like to. I don't know. This seems to be the thing I always want to bring up with people. The first time I ever read Pet Sematary, decades ago, hated it. I have said for decades it is the second most boring book I have ever read. I reread it last year or the year before. It's now one of my favorite Stephen King books. So I think I was just in the wrong place the first time I
Yeah.
read it. So that could be the case.
People will post all the time. I'm not finishing this book. I'm like, well, you could just set it aside and then come back later because sometimes we're just not in the right mood for it.
Exactly. And that could be the case with that Laymon book, which is why I like to give authors, books, movies a second chance.
Yeah.
The first Dean Koontz book I ever read, couldn't stand it. It was years later that I gave him another try, and I really enjoyed the stuff I was reading at that time, which would have been mid 80s. And I went back and read some of the older stuff. I tried that first book a second time, still hated it, but but I did find some that I enjoyed.
I'm curious which book that was.
Shattered.
Shattered. You know, I read that one, but I don't remember much from it, so it probably wasn't that great.
It's basically a father and son, I think. A father and his kid. They're moving across the country. His wife has already moved, but there's some crazed killer that's obsessed with the wife, so he's following the father and son to get to the wife. Something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Read it twice, didn't like it either time.
Man,
But
I think my favorite Dean Koontz is Voice of the Night. Have you read that one?
I may have. How old is
That's one of his earlier ones. It's a
then
kind
I've
of
probably
coming of age story of like two boys, and one discovers that his friend is actually a psychopath and is planning on killing people.
you know what? I know I've read it because I do a series on my YouTube called Reading Remembrances, and I have a list of every book I've read since 1985.
Oh, fantastic.
And I go over that entire list. Every week is the next month in the like
Did
I
you
just recorded.
construct that book from memory, that list from memory, or have
It's
you?
all written down, and I have to look up a lot of the titles because I don't remember. But like I just recorded yesterday, I recorded the November 1998. But the reason I remember now the book that you mentioned is because I just recorded an episode with that book
Oh, fantastic.
sometime within the last couple of months. And it is one that I had to look up. I looked through the list, and there are some books that are so good I still remember them from as far back as 85.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, I'm like, I have no idea what this is. So I look it up on Amazon or Goodreads or wherever I can find it.
I think it's really weird which books I read when I was a kid that like still stand out to me. Like I remember The Hunting Season by John Coyne and Blizzard by Michael C. Norton, like more than I remember whatever I read like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I actually occasionally when I'm looking at this list, I'm like, man, I really wish I would have started writing stuff down before 85 because they're just, I'll get snippets of a memory of a book and just not be able to remember exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know I read that before I started this list and I can't look it up and figure out what it was. Um, so, so yeah, what did we say that the one that I didn't like was called? In the Dark.
In the Dark.
In the Dark. So it was a little while before I picked up some more Laymon, and the second one I read was One Rainy Night, and I loved it.
I desperately want someone to make a movie off of that book. I
Oh,
think that would fit
absolutely.
so well. Yeah.
It was. I thought that was fantastic. And then since then, I've read the Beast House books, which I love. Um, and then there was Resurrection Dreams. I was very excited for, but that one
Resurrection
didn't.
Dreams is a pure B movie. It's so ridiculous and over the top. I couldn't like stop laughing when I read it, and his sense of very perverse humor kind of shines in that book. I think it should be read as a comedy.
See, I think I need to reread that one as well because it didn't, or maybe my expectations were too high because
Yeah.
it didn't. That one didn't thrill me.
I'll say when you reread it, picture Melvin as Clint Howard, and it's just instantly better.
Well, I have found there was quite some time ago. I was reviewing for Monster Librarian, um, and so they had sent me this book, and I was having the hardest time getting through it. I thought it was horrible, poorly written, and there was a point where I just had to switch my brain and look at it as if it were something like Troll 2 or Birdemic or, one of these so bad it's entertaining kind of stories. And once I did that, I was able to breeze through the book. I still couldn't recommend it. It was still a
Yeah.
horrible book, but I was able to read it much more easily once I made that switch.
No, it's weird because I've always defended absurdism. Like, I genuinely think that Nicolas Cage's Wicker Man movie is a good movie. It's just an absurd movie. Like, a friend and I actually like wrote essays together about how that movie is about invasive patriarchy and colonialism, but it's done so in such an absurd, over the top way that it can be handled as a comedy and as a horror. And that the people who critique the new Wicker Man going like, "Oh, well, it's not as like scary as the first one," forget that the first movie was a musical.
Yes.
So like I'm totally here for books being unashamedly absurd and over the top and leaning into like B movie comedy. And I think Layman, he had so many books and such a big variety between them. It's like Resurrection Dreams can be read as just self-aware schlock, but then you get something like Come Out Tonight or In the Dark and Island, where you're like kind of forced to spend time with some really perverse and disturbing people, and it makes you feel like you need a shower afterwards. Or then you can read something like Body Rides, which is a crime story with supernatural elements that leans hard into being a throuple romance.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, there's just like anytime you pick up a Layman book, people will say, "Oh, it's all the same." None of them really are. There's such a wide variety on all of his tones and the sorts of characters that he wants you to spend your time with.
Absolutely. I will agree with that. Um, I will say, as we're going to start to dig into this book, for me, it was in the middle. It's not as bad, in my opinion, as In the Dark, Resurrection Dreams, but I didn't enjoy it as much as One Rainy Night or the Beast House books. I found it middling, and we'll get into why as we talk about the book itself. But why? What is it about this that makes it your favorite?
I think it captures all the various things that make Layman work. It's a suspenseful book. There's a lot of churning plots that, you take your time learning about these characters. And I think the thought process of going into a Layman book is each time he presents a situation, you think, okay, this can go one or two ways. And then he'll choose a third way that you hadn't even considered.
Yes.
I think it's one of his most unpredictable books. I think it's one of his funniest as well. I really like that he took the risk on making two of the main protagonists just absolute fucking creeps who are like weighing the pros and cons of necrophilia.
Yes.
It's like it's just so funny and weird and over the top. It kind of feels like Twin Peaks meets Maniac set in LA.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can see that. And we start with Sherry and her boyfriend. And I think I said the same thing you did, which is they don't have any condoms, but he actually has one and it breaks.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
But I recorded my review of this yesterday, and I think I said the same thing. They don't have any condoms, so he goes out to get them. But then I
Well,
remembered when you
eventually they
said
don't have any condoms. Yeah.
they had the one, and she was so excited. She's like, "Oh, you're prepared. You have one." And then it breaks, and he's like, "Sorry, that was my only one."
What a lame guy. Like, what's his name
Uh,
again? Dwayne. Yeah, of course Dwayne would have a broken condom.
so he leaves, and she waits around, and we already know that there's the fires close by, or not that close by.
They're encroaching.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that this is maybe not the best neighborhood. Um, because the place he goes to, the 24-hour convenience store gas station, isn't that far. Um, but she waits around and then she eventually decides to go out and look for him. And she meets Toby Bones.
Toby Bones.
Toby Bones. So there was a point. One of the things I did like about this is we get to this point very relatively early on where I'm like, where's he going to go from here? She's with this Toby Bones. Things are obviously odd. He's a strange person. Where's it going to go? And then we get to the point where after the taco shop, where he just pulls in the driveway and sort of reveals his character.
Yeah, and I like how we spend so long with him. Like, even though we as a reader are aware that Toby is not a good guy because his name is fucking Toby Bones. um, but he kind of tricks you into sort of thinking, oh man, I hope he's a good guy. I hope the problem comes from somewhere else.
Yeah.
He's just this awkward, shy kid who wants to help. And, you know, they have such a good repertoire together. They don't have, obviously, they don't have romantic chemistry, but they have chemistry. They fit together in the story, and you like listening to them talk. So when he reveals that he's a fucking sex pervert and a psychopathic killer, you just get this double like dose of disappointment. You're just like,
yes,
oh man, I want him to be all right.
yeah, because we had the red herring of the guy in the taco place that just kept looking at him.
The guy who just sits there and looks at people.
Yes, but yeah, when we get the reveal, so she's, he has, for people that haven't read the book and want to be spoiled, she's looking for her boyfriend. She runs into Toby, she's a substitute teacher. She had taught one of his classes. He says he'll help her he saw him walk away with some other guy. He'll help her look for him. And then we have the weird, can we stop at the taco place and get something to eat? And I need to use the bathroom. But then the first real odd thing is that he starts driving in the wrong direction. And then he pulls into the driveway and stops the car. Now, does he tell her, do you remember, does he tell her that he lied about seeing him walk off with another guy, and what he actually saw was him get into the van with another woman? Does he tell her that before he smacks her?
You know, I can't remember. It's been a little while since I read it. I'm flipping through the pages right now. I think didn't he try because Toby Bones, it ends up, is like really fucking homophobic. Didn't he try and make it seem like her boyfriend went off with a guy like together?
Yeah, he tells her that's the initial story. He says he went off with this big muscly guy in like a fishnet shirt.
Yeah.
And they seemed really chummy. And that's when they go off to look for them. But then after the taco place, he's driving in the wrong direction because she wants to go back to the convenience store. And then he stops in a driveway. And I can't remember and I just read this a week ago.
Yeah.
He tells her, no, I made that up because I didn't want you to be hurt. I actually saw him meet a woman outside the convenience store, and they kissed, and they got in the back of his van. And I took
I think I'm flipping through. I think that's what he did say, because he tried to like get her to sort of emotionally lean on him.
Yeah, he's like, I took you on this little side trip in the taco place because I was hoping they would finish up and you wouldn't catch them in the act. So he tells her that because then he just smacks her in the head and slams her head down.
It's kind of like that. He gets so tired of waiting and tired of like, bringing her along. He's just like, fuck it. I flipped to the page where he talks about, because it ends up Toby killed Dwayne and is like keeping him in the back of the car. And he describes like eating pieces of Dwayne.
Oh yeah.
And this is one of my favorite parts because it's both terrifying and really fucking funny, because he says, I sampled him all over. Know the best part? Gritting her teeth, she shook her head. The weenie. And he then like kind of goes, oh, I'm just joking. I didn't eat his penis. I'm not gay. And then like eventually she sees his body and the dick has been bitten off.
If it's cannibalism, is it gay?
But yeah, Toby, he's uh, disturbed incel. He's a homophobe. He's a racist. He's got a horrible family. He's just not a good guy. He's not very charming once you figure out who he actually is.
Yeah, it gets nuts pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And she has to jump out of the car while he's driving. And then she runs back to the taco place and meets the creepy guy that was staring at her, who turns out to be a good guy.
Yeah, is he an ex-cop or is he still a cop?
He never says. He keeps saying he's not a cop, and he never was a cop.
He
But he
kind of
never
feels like he was
says.
a cop, though.
She keeps saying,
That
"No,
feels
you
like
were a cop."
something an ex-cop would say.
She's like, "No, you were a cop." He's like, "I wasn't a cop." So he never actually says what he did, or what his job is, or was. Just he likes to come to this place and watch people. But he agrees to help her, and that's when and it's even before this point, I'm just like, where is this story going to go?
Yeah, because there's a lot of the book left at this point.
Yeah. And then then she and I want to say his name is Tim.
I believe you're right.
They go back to her place. No, they go back to Dwayne's place, and she sees the van is there. On the intercom, he says, "Come on up." And this is where, to me, this is where it really takes off. When she goes upstairs and finds Dwayne's head in the bed. And then she shouts for Tim. He comes in, and Toby just jumps out of the bathroom completely naked with two butcher knives and just goes to town on Tim. And for me, that's when we're off to the races. It's all been set up.
Yeah.
Up to this point, because then it gets nuts.
And yeah, shortly after that is when what you think is the big twist of the book happens.
Yes. Well, again,
And
we're gonna spoil it. You can say whatever.
Yeah.
Tell us what it is.
Toby kills our lead character, Sherry.
Yes.
Just stabs her, butchers her, and throws her down a ditch. And as the reader, you're like, wait, I have like more than half a book left. What the fuck? Like, it's like Janet Leigh in Psycho. You're just all of a sudden the main character is dead and gone. And then we're introduced,
or is she?
And then we're introduced to all the other characters of the book, because so far it has been focused on Sherry and Toby. And you're going to have to remind me of names because you've read this a lot more recently than I did.
I'm horrible at remembering names.
I think Pete is one of them.
Pete and Jeff.
Pete and Jeff. Yeah, we meet Pete and Jeff. One of them they're both young teenage boys. One is kind of a troublemaker who's trying to push the other out of his shell. The one who's in his shell wants to be a writer, but is kind of hemming and hawing over it. We get like a long sequence that feels like Richard Laymon detailing his process of just sort of sitting in front of his work table and going, what the fuck am I going to write about today?
Yeah, that's Pete. And he keeps thinking about, how he has to observe things and absorb things to put into his writing.
Yeah.
And he's reading Hemingway, I believe.
I believe so, yeah.
And then his buddy Jeff comes over. And Jeff's the troublemaker. Hey, let's go play in the pool.
Yeah. It's like, oh, your parents aren't around. We can do whatever we want. And he climbs up and looks over at the hills behind Pete's house and notices a body just lying in the ditch.
There's a dead woman lying in the ditch.
Yeah. And so these two boys spend a while trying to figure out what to do. And this leads to what I already mentioned with the pros and cons of necrophilia.
Yes.
Which is, again, very disturbing, but also really fucking funny. And Then they realize this gal ain't dead. She is still breathing. And that is both a relief and a huge surprise to the reader.
And apparently her name is Cherry.
Yeah, because she's so busted up that she can't really talk right.
Yeah, they keep
So
calling her
yeah,
Cherry
they
for a
clean
while.
her up, they dress her wounds, they're taking care of Sherry.
Yes. And then we're introduced to some of my favorite characters, which are Sherry's family.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Brenda.
Brenda's a sweetheart.
And I like the parents as well.
Brenda is going to be working at the car wash to try and get a
Yes.
new computer for her school.
But those damn popular cheerleader girls always got to stick their nose in and take some of the money.
Yeah, those bitches.
Yeah, so we're introduced to this whole new group of characters. Um, Sherry's sister Brenda, her parents, and
And
like you said,
again, that car wash is at 8321 Fairview Boulevard in Los Angeles. It's going from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
yes, it is. And you can get if you're not satisfied, they'll refund your dirt.
Yeah.
Um, so it's
But
almost
yeah,
like
no, it's almost like we've had the first movie, the origin story, which
yeah,
tells you all about the hero and the villain, the final girl and the slasher. And now we get the body count of all of Brenda's friends.
yeah. And I like the way at this part that we're going back and forth between at one point 3 different perspectives. We've got Pete, Jeff, and Sherry. We've got Brenda and her parents, and then Brenda and her friends at the car wash. And then we have Toby and his brother and his brother's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Now, when you read something like the dynamic between Toby and his brother Sid, we've already seen so many horrible things that Toby has done. Do you feel any sympathy for him when you see
Yeah,
him
it
being
kind of
treated
tricks
so
you.
poorly?
It tricks you back into feeling sorry for him, and then you're given reminders of all the horrible things he's done.
Yes.
And yeah, it's the storyline of him and his brother Sid runs pretty fast and pretty brutally.
Yes. And then let's see, Sherry, once Sherry's recovered enough, she calls her parents, but they've already left. Brenda's already left, and she leaves a message about there's some psycho guy, and he said he's going to come for you.
Yeah, I think we forgot to mention that. He said he's going to target Brenda next after he kills
Yes.
Sherry.
And then Toby goes to her parents' house, and he breaks in, and he wanders around, and he sees that there's a message on the machine, but he ignores it at first. And I don't remember why he listened to it. Oh, go ahead.
I can't remember either. Yeah, I'm picking
Okay,
up
I
on that again.
think I think it's because he's looked at the flyer for the car wash and he is hoping that whatever this message is might give him more information on the car wash. I think. But he plays the message, realizes that Sherry is still alive, and then uses star 69 to call back. And yeah, it's just such a weird, twisty plot.
Yeah.
He calls this number back, which is Pete's house. Pete answers the phone, and I think he holds it up to Sherry, and she's like, yeah, that's the killer. Pete gives him a fake address, which never comes into play.
No, and that's another one where it feels like, oh, Richard Laymon is setting something up so that you expect to go here.
Yeah.
And whoops, we're going this way.
Yeah, Pete gives the address of the house next door, which is an empty house. And yeah, you kind of expect that's where the big showdown's going to take place.
No, it is not an empty house where the showdown ends up taking place.
No, not at all. He so then Toby has to decide, is he going to go to this what he doesn't know is a fake address, but is he going to go to this address and go after Sherry, or is he just going to go to the car wash, find this car wash, and go after Brenda? He decides to go after Brenda.
Yeah, and it's so good. And this is after he's killed Sid, I believe.
Yeah, he killed Sid. He
Yeah,
killed Sid's
it's pretty
girlfriend.
fucking brutally too. It's like I forget if he uses like a power drill or a power
Yep,
saw, but there's some good eye gore in that scene.
yep. He uses the drill, and then he cuts up the girlfriend with a box cutter,
Yeah,
I think. Um, and then yeah, so he goes after Brenda. He goes to the car wash, and he convinces Brenda, her friend, whose name I don't remember, another girl, and two of the boys at the car wash,
is
says
it Fran? Is the other friend?
Fran. Sounds
There's
right.
Quinn
Let's
and Fran.
let's see how quickly, if I take a glance in the book, how quickly I can find a name. I see Quentin, I see Baxter, I see Brenda, I see Fran. There you go. Yes. So Quentin, Baxter, Fran, and Brenda. And Toby says, I've got a couple other cars at home. I'll give you $50 if you come
Yeah,
with.
something that wouldn't be worth it nowadays, but was definitely a
Yeah.
heavy amount of change in 2005.
And of course, we know this is I think that secret to tension in writing is that we know who Toby is.
Yeah.
And the whole time it's like, no, don't go with him. Don't do it. Don't do it. They don't know. He's this chubby little dude who seems nice, and he's going to give him $50 if they wash a couple cars. So they go, they all hop in his car and drive to his house. And I was like, is he actually going to be his house, or is he going to take him somewhere else? But when they walk in and see, I think it says there's newspaper on part of the floor. I'm like, oh yeah, this is his house because he's covering up Sid's blood, which is
Yeah.
what it was. And meanwhile, we keep jumping back and forth to Pete, Jeff, and Sherry, and now they're trying to figure out what are we going to do.
Because they don't feel safe since they gave Toby the address to the house right across from them. Um, and Sherry's worried for Brenda. I forget how it is that they end up finding where Toby is at.
Let's see, they go to Sherry's parents' house and they look around. Toby's not around, but I think they can tell that someone has broken in. And then they talk to somebody, don't they?
Yeah, I think they talked to somebody at the car wash.
But they wouldn't know. Yeah, I can't remember because they have his exact address,
Yeah.
which they wouldn't get from someone at the car wash. They have to talk to somebody.
Oh man, yeah, I'll have to. I'm already looking at the book like I'm going to sit down and reread you.
um,
Because, we read so many books, it's so hard to keep the little details in line.
yes. So while they're searching for Toby, trying to decide what to do, um, things go crazy at Toby's house. He offers them beers. Baxter and Brenda start to leave, and he just cold-bloodedly murders Baxter
Yeah.
and then shoots Brenda. And then Quentin turns out to be a sociopath.
Yeah, because he kind of offers like, "Hey, Quentin, do you want to rape some of these girls?" And Quentin's like, yeah, why not? Sure."
Yeah, insanity. And then Yeah, it's all going crazy. And one of the most shocking parts to me was when after all this, I think Quentin's dead by this point. Um, and Fran has so much going on, but there's a knock at the door, and Toby opens up the door, and it's a cop to say, "We're evacuating. The fires are on the way. This is an emergency evacuation." And he just shoots the cop in the face. I was like, "Holy shit!"
Oh, it's so good. I love it.
But yeah, now I'm trying to remember how the hell they figured out where he is, because Sherry and Pete and Jeff end up going to his house. They're stopped
Yeah,
by the cops. Cops say,
there's
"Hey,
a
we're
nice,
evacuating."
nice big confrontation at that house while the fire is coming down the hills towards them.
Yeah. How the hell did they find the house? Oh goodness. But yeah, the
Because
cops
I
try
know
to
it's in there. Richard Laymon, he never spared any details on stuff like that.
yeah. But that's Brenda. They get an idea.
But yeah, anyways, you know, it we get a big confrontation between Sherry and Toby, and it kind of taught me something about writing horror specifically that I've carried with me for a while. And I know it's not something everyone agrees with, but I love it. Because we know that Brenda punishes Toby for everything that he did, but we don't exactly see it.
Hmm.
We hear that it's happening in the house.
Yes.
And then when she leaves, she's got blood on her. And nobody feels like asking her what she did to Toby. And I love that philosophy of, if you are writing horror, what happens to the villain should not feel like it undoes what they did to their victims.
Hmm. Okay.
And yeah, like I get very kind of bummed out when I see a lot of movies or horror movies especially where it's like a slasher film where the slasher kills the teenagers really fast and then the slasher gets tortured for 20 minutes. And I'm like, it makes it not scary when I go back and rewatch it because I'm thinking of how satisfied I'll be to see that killer get what they deserve after, he quickly killed some teens.
Right.
But in this book, it's the opposite. Like, it goes into so much detail about what Toby does. You remember, the cold-blooded way he shoots people, the way he mutilates his own family members with that fucking power drill, every single thing he does to Sherry. And Sherry getting the upper hand and defeating him doesn't undo that horror.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. And like you said, we don't know the specifics of everything that she did.
Yeah. We see her get the upper hand. We see her like
Yes.
fight him off and get him in a position where she can defeat him and destroy him. But there's not like 400 pages of Toby just getting destroyed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the fire consumes everything,
Yeah.
cleansed in fire.
Mhm.
And then we get the little bit at the end where Tim has survived, and they've formed a little vigilante group.
Yeah, I think they call themselves the dealers at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, because they're like, well, what should we do
Deal.
after we survived all of that? Like, now that now that we've all gotten a taste for violence, what's next?
We'll deal with it.
I love that book. I think it's so good.
um yeah, I enjoyed it. I My biggest problem is and it's the same problem I had with the other one that we've said it 3 or 4 times. I can never remember. Into the night,
In the dark.
dark. I do feel that there are some horrible decisions made by some of the characters that I can't, in my head, I can't justify by the circumstances or anything else.
I hear that about Layman. I never feel it. When I read his books, sometimes things will happen out of convenience, but I feel like he's aware of it and he still walks us through the process of every decision that characters make. He goes so much more in depth on what characters are thinking than, what most authors tend to go for. And I feel like when characters make stupid decisions, and they do it honestly, and they do it in a way where it's like, oh yeah, this is a bad decision, but I'm coming from the perspective of an outsider in this situation, and Richard Laymon is showing me what all is in this environment that's making the person feel like this is the right choice. And
Okay.
yeah, like I feel that way about Come Out Tonight. I feel that way about In the Dark, but like pretty much everything he writes, I call it a churning plot, because his plots, as cinematic and action packed as they are, they kind of gestate and they consider everything. And often it's them trying really hard to like think of what will be the right move that ends up being detrimental to them actually doing something to get them out of their situation.
Right.
Yeah.
I can see that. I've already recorded my review, as I said, and I mentioned this in the review that I get annoyed when people like armchair quarterback horror movies and
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I would have done this. I would have done that. Why didn't they do this?" And I think, well, you're not actually in this horrifying, life-threatening situation. You can't tell me how you would actually react.
Oh
And I
yeah,
try.
it's hard sometimes watching like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre with a modern audience,
Hmm.
because there's so many points in that movie where there's like extended sequences that are just supposed to convey that the character is having a panic attack and does not know what to do.
Right.
People will be like, "Oh, they're just sitting there. They're not doing anything." And I'm like, "No, there's something going on.
It's internal.
It's internal. You got to read into it."
So I do try to see things that way, but I don't know. There were just some things in this book and again in the other one where even with all of that, I'm just like, no, I don't understand this decision that they've made.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see it from different angles as an outsider, as an insider. I just do not get it. Um, but not enough to ruin the book for me. I found it incredibly entertaining and amazingly tense. And again, no idea where things are going to go.
Oh yeah, it's even for laymen, this is a super unpredictable book. Like,
We have that break where it's just where she's dead. What the hell? I'm halfway through the book. There's hundreds of pages to go, and the main character is dead. Except she's not, of course. But
no.
and we're introduced to a whole new cast, and I do like that.
Yeah, I think that's a huge risk and a big swing, and I think he pulls it off so well.
Well, I did listen to the Lucas Mangum Jeff Burke podcast, Make Your Own Damn Podcast,
I love that podcast. They're
and
great.
they did play. I guess Jeff Burke wanted to do a Richard Laymon podcast, and they had recorded an episode. And I don't remember the name of the book that they talked about, but it's a bunch of people that are camping.
Oh, Dark Mountain.
And then, okay. But that seems to have the same type of structure from the way they described it in the podcast.
Yeah, so Dark Mountain starts as almost a slasher type book and then turns into a supernatural revenge book.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It seemed like the first half is this, oh, it's just Friday the 13th, people in the woods slasherish, and then all of a sudden they're back home, and it's this weird curse thing,
Yeah.
and which actually
that
makes me
that
want to.
book features one of the only times that a book has given me a jump scare.
Oh, nice.
And that's,
That just
yeah, the
makes me want to read
library
it more.
sequence. When you read it, the library sequence terrified me.
Well, definitely have to put that on the list then. Move it up the list. Unfortunately, I wish I had more used bookstores relatively close by.
Yeah, it's hard because like used bookstores just don't have books the way they used to. I tend to go online to find the books I want to read. But there's a few in Salt Lake City that have had some good stuff for me. Central Book Exchange at Sugar House has been incredible for me. There's Utah Book and Magazine in downtown SLC, and they have like a shit ton of Barry Wood books, and I got some Chet Williamson novels from them too. And yeah, but
We
it's
used to
hard
have,
to find just like a small bookstore that has all these old paperback from hell novels anymore.
yeah, we used to have a store here just called Booksellers, and it was the best used bookstore I've been to. And I did make the worst book buying decision of my entire life at that store
Oh yeah.
because at the time I was not a huge fan of Stephen King. And so I didn't spend the 50 cents on a first edition of Rage.
Oh, oh no.
Oh, I knew what it was.
That hurts my heart.
I knew it was Stephen King. It
See,
was
I
50.
read I read Rage through the Bachman Books
Yeah,
collection.
that's where I ended up reading it.
It's the only way I could read it. I want that first edition so bad.
But this place had like Richard Bachman books. It had what is it, Lee Nichols,
Oh,
and Owen West,
hey, we know him.
which are both Mr. Kuntz, correct?
Yeah, good old Mr. Kuntz.
Um, yeah, and priced as if they were just some author named Lee Nichols or some author named Owen West.
Oh my God.
The only Kuntz book I own right now is Funhouse.
I love that book. I genuinely do love the movie more though, even though the book has more detail to it and more character. That's a movie that I have been very affectionate for a very long time.
I wish I had an Owen West copy of it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Meyer and his work.
Yeah.
He
He did
his
Paradise Club, right?
yes,
Awesome.
and he's been on this show before, and his choice, I'm pretty sure it was Tim Meyer. He chose the Funhouse, which I saw in theaters when it was brand new. So after we recorded our episode and talked about the movie and everything, I told him, I said, I'm going to go find a copy of the Dean Koontz novelization and read it. So I had no idea that 3/4 of that book was just all brand new Dean Koontz material,
Yeah.
basically. And it's just that
It's
last
honestly
part.
kind of barely based on the movie.
Yeah. That last part is the movie, but not even exactly the movie. It hits the hard beats, but there's big differences even in that last part where you're at the funhouse. But I did enjoy the book, and I do really enjoy the movie. But we've sort of gotten off topic. Come out tonight. Any last final thoughts on the book?
Again, if you like sleaze, if you like action and suspense, then this book is perfect for you. Even though we've gone through all the spoilers and talked about it, like it's nothing compares to reading it. And you can say that about any Layman book. You got to read them for yourself.
Yes, yes. I did have when I sort of started this series. I was like, are we going to spoil things when we talk about them? And I think, yeah, I give a spoiler warning. people can pause this and read the book. The book's not, it's 400 some pages, but it's quick.
Yeah. I mean, last time I read it, it took me like 2 days. That was it.
So people can pause this, go read it, and come back. I
Yeah.
gave them that warning, so I don't feel bad about it. um, all right. So, anything else that you want to plug, talk about, say to the audience before we sign off?
Yeah, folks, make sure you buy They Want Us Gone. If you want to read something that makes you sad, it's a very sad book, but I'm very happy with it. Yeah, that's my latest one. I'll also plug, I didn't write this, but Brian Barry wrote the sequel to my book Splattersaurus, and that just came out the other day. And his sequel is called Splattersaurus Rex.
Yes.
And I just read it, and it's super fun.
I have Splattersaurus. I don't know why I didn't. I don't know where that one went.
Cool.
I haven't read it yet.
Make sure you read the sequel after you read the first one. It's really funny.
It's gotta be right over there somewhere.
Yeah.
And I again, animals eating people, love it.
Oh, it makes me happy. Yeah.
So, reading about a killer dinosaur, you describe it as a slasher, right?
Yeah, it's basically a cabin in the woods slasher, but with a dinosaur.
Cool.
And Brian Barry took the aliens approach with his sequel and made it an all-out like war between humans, aliens, and dinosaurs.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you care to share, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Facebook at Judith Sonnet and Instagram at Fulltime Horror Junkie. I'm sure the page is still up, but I am not on Twitter. So if you message me on there, I won't be answering. But I am accessible on Facebook and Instagram. If you look up Judith Sonnet on both, I'm sure you can find me.
Great. Well, thank you very much. So I'm going to do my outro. If you could stick around for a few minutes once I stop recording. But thank you very much to Judith Sonnet. Folks, check out Come Out Tonight by Richard Laymon. Check out all of Judith's stuff. Everything I've read from her has been fantastic. I'll have links to things down in the description below. So I think that's everything. I haven't done one of these in a while, so I don't remember exactly how I used to close out. But thank you again, Judith Sonnet. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I'm Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books. And then we hit stop